Thank you, everybody. So if we just go around the screen and I'll just call out people. What we thought it would be nice for Sheena to know which, introduce yourself, which church you represent and where you're up to with Eco Church, because it kind of then gives Sheena a bit of an idea of the audience. So welcome, Sheena. And, as people know, Sheena's... Do you want to introduce yourself first, Sheena, because you're our guest?
Okay. Well, I'm Sheena Heaton. I'm from St. Peter's, Maney in Sutton Coldfield. I'm a member of our Eco Maney group. I'm the vice chair of the PCC, and I'm also on Diocesan Synod, and therefore our Deanery Synod, Aston Sutton Coldfield. I've been a member of St. Peter's for 35 years, something like that, so a long time. And I wasn't in at the start of the Eco group because I was still working full-time at that stage, but I've been involved since I retired in 2013.
Lovely, thank you, Sheena, thank you. And then if people can say their name, what church they're from or where they're up to with Eco Church. Caroline, do you want to start?
Yeah, well, my church is St. Philip's in Dorridge, which was a brand new build church which opened in September 2021. We got our Bronze Award to coincide with when we opened, and we're going to be applying for Silver in the next month or so.
Thank you, Caroline. And Ian Langston, do you want to introduce yourself?
Just trying to unmute, sorry. So I'm Ian Langston from Emmanuel Heath, along with Rosemary. We're just setting out on our eco journey, I think. Although we've done quite a few things, and I think we're sort of ready to get to bronze almost straight away. As I say, it's fairly early for us, inspired a bit by Holy Cross, Val there, and Reverend Debbie. So hopefully we can get on fairly quickly.
Thank you, Ian. Ruth, do you want to introduce your...
Me, this Ruth.
Yes, sorry, yeah.
Hi, I'm Ruth Clark. I'm from St. Lawrence Church in Northfield. We've got our Bronze Award and we're sort of working still. Well, we've been working for a long time for our Silver Award. We sort of ran out of steam a little bit. We've had our major overhaul with our lighting and heating, which I think will take us hopefully into the Silver, but we've just got to get ourselves organised and sort of put it all together. So that's us.
Thank you, Ruth. Rosemary Rivet. You're muted, Rose. Rosemary, you're muted, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I'm Emmanuel Heath, along with Ian Langston, you spoke a minute ago. And we're just about ready to, I think, to go forward with the Bronze Award. We're there almost, just about. So we're looking for some sort of inspiration and to move beyond that.
And Kate Crocker.
I'm Kate Crocker from Shirley Parish. We submitted our application for Silver last week, so they're working on it.
Wonderful. Val?
I'm Val King from Holy Cross, and we've got our bronze and on our way to silver.
Lovely, thank you. And Pauline?
I'm from the Church of the Ascension, Hall Green. I've started it as a paper exercise, despite my good intentions. I haven't actually gone live onto the site. We've been registered for some time, but we have not yet applied for Bronze Award, and I had intended to be all up and going for this meeting, but I have not.
Oh, well, we hope to inspire you. And if you need any support to go online, Pauline, just shout.
Thank you. I'll ask a question afterwards at the session.
Yeah. Sandra?
Hello, I'm Sandra Walton from the Cotteridge Church. which is, as some of you may know, an LEP. So we're sort of 3 in 1, United Reform, Methodist and Anglican. And we've got our Bronze Award in September, working towards our Silver. So quite excited about that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sandra. And Ruth Tetlow.
Oh, Ruth. Hello, I'm from All Saints Kings Heath, and like most people here, it seems we've got our Bronze Award. We got it well before COVID some time ago, but we have been held up from progressing to Silver.
Thank you, Ruth. And Fred.
Oh, hi there, I'm Fred Conley and I facilitate the Eco Group at Christchurch, Selly Park. We've got our Silver Award and we're working towards our Gold Award at the moment.
Oh, great.
Great.
How exciting. Ian, did you want to come in?
Yes, from Lapworth, St Mary's Lapworth. We have our bronze and looking at this presentation to help think about silver.
Excellent. And Claire?
Oh, hi. Yes. Yeah, I'm Claire Hammond. I'm from St Francis in Bourneville, and we're working on our silver at the moment as well. I've got my children around.
Right.
And the cat.
And the cat. It adds, it adds. Peter?
Hello, Peter Baker from St Anne's, West Heath. We have our Bronze Award and we're considering now going forward towards Silver, but it may be a slow journey, but we'll give it a go.
Oh, thank you, Peter. That's so a good turnout from across the deanery. So Sheena, that gives you a bit of a, oh, shall I introduce myself? Sorry, I'm Heather from the Church of the Ascension in Sturchley. We got bronze just before the pandemic, and yeah, we ought to be working towards silver, but we've kind of, like perhaps other people, lost a bit of momentum. So perhaps this will G us up, Sheena. Over to you to share the screen and
Yes. Well, I just say here now, it's very, very impressive that for your deanery, I don't think Aston and Sutton Coldfield are anywhere near the sort of level that you all are. So congratulations on that. I'm going to share my screen now. Hope it works. Okay, you must excuse my voice. I've had a dreadful cold, and having been practicing a bit this afternoon, I think I've roughed it up somewhat. Anyway, I understand from Heather and from your wide range of introductions that you have a great range of knowledge and experience of eco-church across this deanery. Most of you seem to be further on than I expected, and obviously others are looking towards the Gold Award. So bearing this in mind, I tried to look at St Peter's experience and think, what would I do if I had to do it again from scratch? One of the good things about the diocesan and deanery environmental setup is that we're able to share experience, and every church doesn't have to reinvent the wheel for itself. The presentation will cover the areas shown. The slides of the talk can be circulated, and I have attached lists of key points, of potential quick wins, and of useful websites and contacts. There should be plenty of time following the presentation for questions and discussion. Throughout my talk, I have tried to emphasize what I think were key points in our success and actions that the eco-church inspection team particularly liked or commended. First, a bit about St Peter's journey. We started in 2009 when the PCC set shrinking our carbon footprint as one of our transforming church targets. We were fortunate to have the core of an environmental group. The vicar was keen, and there were a couple of other people with good environmental experience. A group was formed, which was called Maney, and this became a formal subcommittee of the PCC. We held regular meetings with an agenda, minutes, etc., and we reported back to each meeting of the PCC. And this is my first key point. The formality was important because it provided a framework and a discipline. This was commended by the EROSHA inspectors. Also, a church's eco work needs to be supported and respected by the PCC. If your eco group is not represented on the PCC, do press for at least one person to be co-opted. In addition to being on the PCC and making regular reports, Maney undertook to write an article for each edition of the parish magazine as a way of keeping wider congregation involved as to what was happening. And we still do this. Keeping the congregation informed and involved is important. Don't let your eco group become a clique or a talking shop. If we're going to save the planet, everyone needs to play a part. The first major achievement we had was getting solar panels on the roof of the church. The second picture, I'll see if I can move it slightly. Sorry. Oh dear, right. That's it. You can only see half the picture on the right, but it does show the person who is the chair of our Maney, John Haywood, who many of you may very well know. The cut-off figure is the vicar, and they're up there admiring the solar panels. At the start, this was an initiative more about saving energy costs than for its eco-benefits. Because the church roof was ideal, it's south-facing, it's not overlooked, and it can't be seen from the street, we had been looking to do solar panels for some time. Unfortunately, the Diocesan Advisory Committee, the DAC, and the Victorian Society put various obstacles in the way, and we didn't achieve our goal until 2014. However, the controversy and the struggles engaged the congregation, and so were ultimately helpful. We celebrated the installation with a special service and the blessing of the panels. Another key point here is to celebrate achievements. It's really important to make much of your successes. It helps to engage the congregation, and it brings some publicity to the eco group and the church. Use the local paper if you still have one, which we don't. Put it on your website and see if you can't get a mention in the diocesan bulletin. It also makes people feel that their efforts are producing results. Following the installation of the solar panels, we decided to register for EcoChurch, and we achieved our bronze in 2016, our silver in 2018, and gold last year. We probably could have gone for gold earlier, but of course the pandemic intervened, and like one or two of you mentioned, we did lose momentum. Somehow getting the silver felt like a great achievement, and gold was just a bit difficult. So it really did take a big push last summer. When we had that terribly hot weather and it was too hot to go out even, I sort of just sat here and pored over my computer and put together all the information that they needed. As you probably know, the EcoChurch survey covers 5 areas: worship and teaching, buildings, land, community and local engagement, and lifestyle. I will look briefly at each of these. Worship and teaching. We'd always taken prayer and worship for creation seriously at St. Peter's, but once we started on the EcoChurch Award, we put more emphasis on this. We included, and still do, prayer for the environment at least monthly in our parish prayer calendar, and more often in Lent and Creation Tide. We make a big thing of Creation Tide with guest speakers, special services, bring your pet to church Sunday, and a forest church session for children. We always finish the season with our Harvest Thanksgiving, followed by a bring and share lunch. In 2019, we organised an Earth Hour service, and in 2020, an Environmental Study Day, inviting other local churches to join us. Unfortunately, that had to be cancelled because of COVID. We use Lent as a time of teaching and challenge on the environment. We encouraged the congregation to calculate their carbon footprint and took laptops into coffee after church to show people how to do it. An environmental quiz on laptops also proved popular the next year, and we provided tips and information every Sunday in the pew sheets. One Creation Tide, we asked people to make a pledge, providing suggestions as to what they might do. For example, fewer car journeys, hang the washing outside, buy a reusable coffee cup. The pledges were collected with the offerings and blessed on the altar. We did a follow-up report on the pledges which were made in the church magazine. An even more eye-catching idea is to have a pledge tree where people write their pledges on leaf shapes and hang them on the tree. And this is the sort of idea you can find by exploring the amazing amount of resources available online to support worship. There are liturgies, music, sermon outlines, and prayers, as well as ideas for children and much more. The next key point then is to take full advantage of worship and prayer. It's cheap, and it's what we already do. God has charged us to be stewards of his creation, and caring for the earth is the fifth mark of mission. It's important to remember that worship is formation as well as adoration. The more we pray for, learn about, and thank God for his creation, the more we will appreciate it and want to look after it. Now, this is another key point. Help people to access information. Tracy longer articles. Give people suggestions for saving energy, cutting their carbon footprint, what can and can't be recycled. If they're not very computer literate, help them to use laptops and the internet. And these are some of the older people in our church learning how to calculate their carbon footprint. Next section is building. For us, getting our buildings to measure up was the most difficult section of the whole survey because we're grade 2 listed. And the church is considered an excellent and unaltered example of its time, which was 1905. It is a nightmare to heat and insulate, as you can see. Double glazing the church or insulating the roof is not an option. So we went for LED lighting as something we could do without much trouble in the main part of the church. We also changed our energy suppliers for green providers. Boiler failures during the previous 5 years have meant that we had to replace the boilers in both church and hall, but this did enable us to get A-rated efficiency on both. We did consider other types of boilers, but they weren't suitable. In many ways, it has been rather an advantage because heating technology is not yet really advanced enough to make major effective changes to green energy for most churches. Having A-rated boilers enables us to put off the major changes until technology hopefully catches up. Don't be in too much of a hurry to change equipment if it is functioning efficiently, because a lot of energy will have gone into making it in the first place. Any move to biomass boilers or heat pumps needs a lot of research and consideration. We signed up for a Green Journey survey to identify heat savings, although this was not very productive. And we also had an infrared survey conducted by the property team from the diocese. These are free and worth doing as they identify what is possible and what would be difficult or expensive. The water supply to both church and hall is metered, and all our toilets have been twinned since 2019. The hall on the left here is much more modern than the church and not listed. So we were able to press ahead there with better insulation and complete double glazing. We also had new full-length curtains and improved heating. We have since replaced all the hall lights with LEDs and introduced motion sensors in toilet and corridor areas. The vicarage on the right, like the church, is a grade 2 listed building. And as the only sort of thing that we've been able to do there is to do secondary double glazing because of the listing and the fact that it is a lovely arts and crafts building. But I'm very glad I don't have to heat it, I must say. Recently, we changed our outdoor lights to LEDs as well. And when finances permit, we will replace the remaining non-LED lights in the chancel. The Eco Church inspectors are very aware of financial restraints on churches, and they don't expect everything to be done at once. What they are looking for is an awareness of needs and possible remedies, a planned programme of improvement, and a proven record of reaching achievable targets in reducing energy usage. Land. We have little in the way of useful land, as the church was built on the site of an old quarry on sloping ground between two busy suburban roads. Pilkington Avenue, which is named after the glass company who used the quarry because of its particularly fine sand, and Maney Hill Road at the front here. The front of the church is dominated by huge and venerable trees, which allow little scope for planting or recreation. The chief of these is the peace oak here, planted in 1919 to commemorate the fallen. So removing it is definitely not an option. But it does restrict what we can do with this, which is about the only flat piece of land that we've got. And absolutely nothing will grow under it. So it is a bit of a nuisance, quite frankly, but I shouldn't really say that because it wouldn't be approved of. But anyway, we can't do very much with the land that we've got at the front. However, we have got Tower Walk, which is a walkway that stretches from one of the roads to the other and is used by many local people. They're mostly not churchgoers, they're dog walkers and people who just want to get away from the traffic and have a sort of shortcut through from one road to another. The narrow borders on both sides of Tower Walk are maintained by a small working party, generally Eco-Maney members who are all over the age of 70, and we meet once a month. We have tried to involve young people, and the cubs have made and erected bird boxes and the brownies planted bulbs, but generally we don't have much additional help. We've planted some edible plants, mainly herbs, but the land is not suitable for a community allotment or food production. It is quite wild. We can barely keep it under control, and very shady, but it is home to 60 species of wildflowers and a variety of trees and shrubs. And there are squirrels, foxes, and lots of birds and insects. The most important thing is that Tower Walk provides a welcome green space away from the traffic, which is much appreciated by the people who use it. During COVID, we held services, a nativity play, and carol singing outside. We created a memory mound for people to remember loved ones by placing flowers or candles or whatever during the pandemic. And it also doubles as an Easter garden at the appropriate time of year. The key point, I think, from this is to concentrate on what is sensible and attainable and things that can be accomplished with the resources that you have available. Calculate the value of the outcome against the amount of effort that you would have to put in. For example, the Eco Church inspectors were quite keen that we should try to establish a wildflower meadow on a fairly useless piece of mown grass at the back of the church. This is something that we have tried before albeit in a different place. The meadow failed miserably, and it upset a lot of people in the process. I have to say we are fairly sceptical about the inspector's suggestion, and it isn't something that we'll be in a hurry to tackle. Looking at the bigger picture of climate change, wildflower meadows and churchyards are not going to make a great deal of difference. It is, of course, very fashionable, but it can be a distraction. The best you can say is that it will engage the congregation, because half will love it and half will hate it. So you should get good discussions going. But it's much better to concentrate your efforts on where they will pay off. Community and local engagement is the next section. If we are to save the planet, we need to win support from a far wider audience than our congregation or local parish. We need to engage with the wider community and to bring influence to bear on our MPs, councillors, and on business, finance, and education institutions. There is no way individuals can make the differences needed. Only governments and corporate institutions can make the changes necessary. For example, we need clear standards and directives around energy efficient housing. We need governments to invest in insulation, public transport, electric car charging points, solar panels on schools and public buildings, and much more. At St. Peter's, we've been able to develop a good relationship with our MP, Andrew Mitchell. We meet him at least twice a year, and he picked up points we have raised and asked questions about them in Parliament. As Minister for Overseas Development, Andrew is keen to restore the international development budget to 0.7% of GDP, and he is passionate about global justice issues, which are, of course, linked to climate change issues. Working with Eco Sutton, a non-religious eco group, we've been involved in monitoring air pollution in the town and have run stalls in local shopping centres to bring eco matters to the attention of passers-by. We supported local school children in their school strike protest and joined the march in Birmingham ahead of COP26. With other churches in Sutton, we hosted the young people who marched from Land's End to Glasgow. We encourage people to write to their MP and have provided opportunities and help to do so. Before COVID, we held an annual litter pick in the parish, and we've got another planned for this year. We involve the Scouts and Cubs in this, and it provides an excellent opportunity to engage with local people. One of the beneficiaries of our church charitable giving is always an eco charity. We usually give to Water Aid, but we have given to the Woodland Trust in the past. And in fact, tonight I'm missing a PCC meeting at which they will be deciding on the charities for the current year. So I have put my suggestions in. Moving on to lifestyle. In most churches, you will find people who are keen gardeners, supporters of animal charities, or members of organisations such as the National Trust. They are a good source of knowledge and support for eco projects. At St. Peter's, we're trying to become a fair trade church and use fair trade products as much as possible. We now never use disposable plates or cutlery, and we try to encourage whole users to do the same. It's mentioned in the hire agreement that we give them, and we give them website addresses of businesses producing eco-friendly party products. We do all we can to avoid food waste at any shared meals that we have, and we compost less food and the paper napkins. We collect aluminium waste for Eco Sutton, who augment their funds by selling it to a local scrap metal dealer. People are encouraged to save their used stamps and recycle their Christmas cards, although we also organise a communal card. We also encourage people to buy charity Christmas cards and to avoid cards with plastic wrapping. We have campaigned against the use of glitter on cards and wrapping paper, against wet wipes and peat-based composts. We held a wedding fair to show how a lovely wedding could be accomplished on a budget and encourage people to recycle items like wedding outfits and ascot hats. About twice a year, we have a second-hand bookstall. We encourage people to walk to church and to offer lifts to the less able. When we campaign against something, we try to offer information about alternatives and where to find them. We have an Maney notice board and post items of interest. Changing lifestyles can be a slow process. You need to be persistent. We have found that by highlighting eco matters and giving people information and a chance to take part, for example, in calculating their carbon footprint, the majority of the congregation has now become very supportive of eco action. Over time, new habits and attitudes develop and become embedded until considering environmental issues becomes a way of life. Which is not to say that there isn't a long way to go. People are very reluctant to face up to the really difficult changes that we will have to make if we are to reach net zero by 2030. For example, flying less, giving up big cars, paying more for our clothes and food. And this is a focus for our ongoing work beyond gold, but it would be equally helpful to those churches who are seeking a slightly different angle on the gold, particularly, for example, if they're having problems with their buildings meeting the criteria. We've tried to highlight the problems involved with reaching net zero and the importance of planning now, not just for the church, but in our own homes and lives. We want to take this message out to the broad parish and to people who use our hall. To this end, we have run an away day for the PCC last year and are working on plans to communicate with the wider congregation and with our hall users later this year. We continue to work across the diocese through BACA and with other churches and environmental groups. John Haywood, our chair, whom I mentioned earlier, and I are both members of Diocesan Synod and have been successful with other people, Caroline among them, in taking eco-motions through Synod and the motion to go for net zero by 2030 and a motion to divest from fossil fuels. John is a member of the Diocesan Advisory Committee, the DAC, which oversees all matters to do with church buildings. He, along with Heather and Caroline from this deanery, is a member of NZEG, the diocese's net zero environment group, which works with the diocesan property team on the net zero programme. If you're not aware of the property team, do please look at the environmental pages on C of E Birmingham and see how much help they can provide. Please also make sure that you provide them with your energy usage data, the EFT, each year, so that they can monitor progress. Links are provided at the end of these slides. So, what did we learn from our eco-church journey? Well, bronze and silver were not too difficult. Looking back, I wouldn't say it was necessarily the case at the time, but they really weren't too difficult. And the fact that you're not inspected makes a big difference. But gold was a completely different ballgame. It's a big step up. If you get to the stage of making your gold submission, don't think that that's the end of it. We were inspected by a team of 4, Sarah Candia from Russia and 3 others from churches which already achieved gold. They'd really done their homework. They'd read everything we submitted and they'd scrutinized our website, pointing out that we still had a photograph of the bronze plaque instead of the silver one on the website, which was rather embarrassing. They were with us for most of a day and questioned everyone on the team and the clergy, as well as making a comprehensive tour of the church and the grounds. Oops. The additional shock, however, was the amount of extra information we had to provide in advance. We needed a comprehensive narrative of our eco journey, a portfolio of evidence, such as copies of the prayer calendars, orders of service, news sheets, articles, photos, etc. They wanted information about meetings with our MP, contacts with eco groups, the work that we did in the diocese, etc. They wanted information about our energy use and how we had reduced it over time. And this was not easy because COVID made a farce of energy usage, because you couldn't compare like with like. But our treasurer is a bit of a whiz on these things, and he did manage to demonstrate over the time that we'd been doing Eco Church that we had definitely reduced our energy appreciably, energy usage appreciably. They wanted a land management plan, including a map of the outside space and a spreadsheet showing trees and wildflowers in the churchyard. Each member of the Maney team had to fill out a pro forma and what we saw as the highlights and challenges of each section of the survey. But producing this information gives you the opportunity to expand on the good things and to explain things that have not worked. If you've tried to do something and failed, it's okay, as long as you can give good reasons. A good example is that they ask if you have a car sharing scheme. We had to say no on the survey, but we were able to explain that we had been advised that there were too many insurance complications if we did have that. Instead, we were able to tell them that there was a great deal of informal car sharing and that we encouraged walking to church whenever possible. A key point from this, I think, is that you do need to document everything and keep very good records. Take photographs of everything that you do and make sure you have the dates right. We really had to dig around to find the necessary evidence. If I was doing it again, I would get a biggish box at the start and keep every scrap of paper, as well as organising a much, much more efficient filing system on my computer. Something else that we found the gold inspectors were looking for was progression. They didn't expect everything to have been done at once and were accepting of limitations imposed by listed status or the type of building. They welcomed the fact that we were continuously making improvements, that we were planning changes as we could afford them, or as we could persuade people to accept them. For example, we still haven't put LED bulbs in the chancel, as the existing fittings are incompatible and they will be expensive to replace. But the fact that it was on our to-do list seemed to be okay. Planning is another key point. We definitely didn't plan well enough or keep sufficient records as we went along. Looking back, I think it is the chief thing I would do differently. Try to make your journey look as if it has been planned and that you have set targets and worked in a logical and progressive way. Finally, some thoughts about the survey itself. By the sound of it, you're all quite familiar with the survey, so I won't explain how the line changes from bronze to silver to gold, etc. The survey questions are such that you tend to think it must be all or nothing. Because there are usually only 4 options, and sometimes your situation does not fit any one of these, it may actually be better to tick the need more information or not applicable option, and then set out the current situation in the additional of information option, which is at the bottom of each section. You need to play with the survey. You can be hypothetical. Pretend that you meet the requirement to see how that affects your overall score, or put in something that is not yet achieved. As long as you don't save it, you can change things as much as you want. The important thing is to be able to submit the survey, so you must tick all the boxes with some response. But the really important information will be in your additional comments. And in the case of gold, in all the supporting documents that you will need to provide. My last key point, therefore, is to get to know the Eco Church survey, play with it, and use additional information boxes to the fore. The last 3 slides are a summary of the key points, of quick wins that you can go for, and details of useful information. I hope that you find them useful. And thank you for listening. Any questions?
Oh, thank you, Sheena. That was absolutely fantastic. And so we're just going to open the floor now to, while we've got Sheena with us, to kind of pick her brain. So anybody who wants to just step right in, unmute and ask your question.
Oh gosh, just dropped water in my mouth.
Sheena?
Yes?
Oh,
I'm just trying to get rid.
Hello.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm just trying to get rid of this thing off my screen so I can see everybody. I've only got a few people.
Hello.
Have you hit stop sharing?
Have I hit? Ah, right, stop share. That's it. Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Caroline. Yeah, it's great. I can see everybody now.
It was just a quick question, actually. I was interested in your sort of recycling schemes and whether you open this up for members of the community to bring recycled goods to the church at all.
We don't officially. We have got only in the last year or so recycling bins at the church, because our church is quite open. We've got this walkway through, and we do have problems with drug dealers, and it's quite secluded, and so all sorts of things could just be vandalized or knocked about or whatever. But we've now got some bins and they're open for people walking past to put things in, but it's not like a mini recycling centre where you could bring all your bottles after Christmas or something like that.
And have you got one specific person who maintains that, have you? Or
well, we've got a whole caretaker, and he takes them down to to the road, and the council empty them and he brings them back up again. But yes, it seems to work out okay, but it's mainly for things like paper from the church office and so forth, and cans and bottles and things from the kitchen.
We've got a scoutmaster actually who collects the crisp bags and the cheese and whatever, and he's made about £500 actually to play back into the uniformed organisation. So that was a really positive thing for us. But he's taken responsibility for it really, which I think really is important, that someone does have overall control.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because something I didn't mention because it's not really very important, but we Sutton Coldfield went in for Britain in Bloom, and there was money available, so we applied for some planters for the front of the church, which is very, very shady and nothing much will grow. But I seem to have become responsible for the planters, which I don't mind. I'm keen on gardening and everything. But last summer, with the heat, I was having to go and water almost every day. And it was exhausting because, you're carrying watering cans, heavy old watering cans. And, I tried to get 1 or 2 other people to help, which they did. But I always felt the onus was on me, and I had to get round there and do the watering. So there's limits to what one individual can do, really, I think, and that can be a problem.
Could I ask another question? Have you got a battery system associated with your solar panels at all?
No.
No.
No, we haven't. No, I mean, they were very early solar panels. I mean, we do send quite a bit of electricity to the grid, and we do get a feed-in tariff, not as good as it would have been if Victorian society hadn't held things up so much. But we do still get that. But
I think Sandra, Sheena, I think Sandra's got a question, if that's okay.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hi, Sandra.
Can you unmute?
You're on mute.
There we go. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
It's more of an observation, Sheena. I'm just so grateful for the information that you've given us, particularly providing documentation, because we started our eco group about 18 months ago, and it just makes me realize that I've got to backtrack myself a bit and get copies of things that I've got on the computer but not anywhere else, in order to get it ready. So I'm so grateful. I just, I hadn't thought of that as being evidence and what we might need. So thank you.
No, we didn't know about it either, and it came as quite a shock. It shouldn't have, I suppose, because when you think about it, it's a standard that we're going for, and you always have to provide evidence, don't you? But I don't know, it's so much easier at bronze and silver levels.
Yeah.
I'm glad they are demanding. It means it seems more valuable.
Yes, that's right.
Kate, did you have
bronze and silver? You're effectively marking your own homework to a large extent.
Yes. Kate, did you have some specific questions about the listing and things?
Was that Kate?
Kate Crocker. Are you all right? Are you okay?
Have you sort of managed to get round the listing problems then, Kate?
Well, not really. The church is grade 2 listed, so it's very difficult to do anything. I think what brought us to silver was being able to do a lot to our church house to insulate it and change the heating and change the lighting. So that brought everything up. I mean, the church is a real challenge. It's the next thing we're looking at, with very, very old, inefficient boilers that keep breaking down, and no double glazing. And it's a big Victorian building. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to take a lot of thought and a lot of advice to work out what's best for us. Maybe just try warming the congregation rather than the building.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that when the boiler went about 5 years ago now, we had to move into the hall for the services, and it's something that we have considered we might have to do in the future. Just not heat the church beyond a sort of frost-free level, and have services in the hall during the coldest months of the year. I mean, I think one of the problems is that getting to net zero is going to hurt. It's not, and that's not a walk in the park. I mean, everything's going to hurt for everybody. Unless you're lucky to live in a very well insulated home or something like that. And I think we're all burying our heads in the sand to some extent as to how we are going to get to net zero and how we are going to hopefully save the planet.
Ruth's got her hand up. Ruth Clark.
Yeah, can I just say that heating the congregation is what we've done with our heating now, and that seems to work quite well. I don't know all the ins and outs of how it's done, but if anyone's interested about how we've done it, then I can dig out bits and pieces.
Yes. Do you have heaters in the pews then, or?
Yeah, it is. I think we had heaters all around the place at one stage. I think it's really just in the pews now. What I can work out. To say, I don't know the all the technical bits behind it. It's
Mhm.
that's what we went for, heating the
Yeah.
people, not the
Yes.
church. Yeah.
I mean, I know that Patrick Gerard, the bishop's advisor on the environment, he's the rector of Baddesley Clinton, and it's a medieval church. They're not even connected to the mains, I believe. And they are virtually net zero already, because they don't heat it. They've got sort of heaters for individual people, sort of thing, rather than heating the church. And in some ways, medieval churches, and I think it's St. Lawrence one, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's about 12th century.
Yes,
yeah, like that, yeah.
In some ways, they're better off than the Victorian and Edwardian ones like ours, because they were built so lofty, and they were built with a heating system, but it was the old-fashioned pipes and everything like that, and they had somebody to stoke the boiler in the basement type of thing. So I don't, we certainly don't know. I mean, the diocesan people have sort of made some suggestions about, you can apparently have a sort of curtain of warm air, and you can have devices which bring air down instead of, hot air rises, but that you suspend something from the roof. But then that's not going to look very much better than,
Well, the other thing we've had a porch put in where the old door was.
Yes.
The main big door, and it was just a draft that came into the church as people came out. We've actually got in a porch now constructed, so that's helped with keeping the heat. I mean, that's not appropriate for every church, but that's another thing that we've done to help.
One thing that we found, and was very exciting actually, because they suggested that you can put magnets, fridge magnets, over keyholes. If you've got big old keyholes and there's a draft comes through them. But we discovered that our tower door, our west door, actually already had inbuilt not fridge magnets obviously, but covers for the keyhole. So the Edwardians thought about it. Even then, they must have been used to the drafts coming through.
Val, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, Ruth, I'd like to be in touch with you about heating the people. I'd like to know more about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, how do we do that then? Do you
I'm
want
on the WhatsApp group.
I'm on WhatsApp. Yes.
You could put your email address in the chat. You can send a message just to one person. So
can you? I don't know how to do that.
If you see on the can you click on the chat?
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you'll see that it comes up. You can either do it to everyone, or you can send it.
Right. So if I just send you, do you want me to send you my email address then?
Yeah.
Email.
And I'll send mine to everyone, I think.
Let me just see, how do I do this chat?
And if what I'm thinking of doing is that with this recording, I can then forward it to everybody. So for some of you, you've got eco groups who want to watch this, and other people who haven't been able to attend today can benefit from Sheena's presentation. And I'm sure that across the deanery, either you'll get invited to other deaneries, or we can share this link if that's okay with everybody. Is there any other questions for Sheena? I mean, I'm very happy to stay with questions for the next 5 minutes or so if you want.
I did wonder if Sheena, you were able to get a grant or anything for your solar panels at the time. I realise it's a long time ago now, but I don't know if grants were available the solar panels now?
We didn't, because we had, the reason that we were able to go for it was because we had sold a building, there was a cottage adjacent to the church which belonged to the church, and we had no more use for, so that was sold.
Okay.
And that's where the money came from. But John Haywood, he is the secretary of an organisation called Power for Good, which helps churches to put solar panels on their roofs.
Okay.
So if you just Google Power for Good, it will come up.
Okay.
I don't know whether they've got the money. People invest. Members of the congregation I mean, it's diocesan wide and it's ecumenical as well, but people invest and then they get us, it's not a gift so much as a loan.
Yeah. I think
it enables people to, and then
as I recall, we have solar panels at home, and when we had them fitted, it was a question of either somebody paid for them and took the, if you like, the proceeds from the feed-in tariff, or we paid for them ourselves and got that tariff. Obviously, you've paid for it outright and got the tariff back, which is great. So it's
But I mean, I think you don't get a feed-in tariff now, do you? So
don't you?
No, but the government abolished it, which is
Ruth, did you want
so
to say
incredibly short-sighted.
It is, because as well, because you as a church don't necessarily get very much benefit from it other than that tariff. I don't think our electricity usage is that high, not as much as, so the only time you're using it is when you're in the building, and even then probably not to the full extent. So the rest of it is okay, it's beneficial to the planet, of course, but the electricity company is getting the benefit from it, not you.
The only thing that perhaps could happen is if the church happens to be near other premises that could use the electricity. I understand that it's possible to arrange to link up with them. So
okay. That's an interesting concept. And the other thing that I think somebody mentioned earlier is if you have battery storage.
It's apparently
there's a huge
very
cost to all of those
expensive.
things. Yeah, exactly.
I think Val King wanted to ask a question. Did you, Val? And then Fred next.
Yeah, well, really, I just wanted to say thank you, Sheena. I should have said thank you before asking for what I wanted. A big thank you for what you've given, lots of information. And I was looking on, I'm doing a display board, and I'm doing a pledge-og. So it's a hedgehog with each spike is a pledge. So hopefully that's what's going to happen for people to have pledges. But when you mentioned it, I thought, oh, great. Is there any chance of you having water under your shaded trees safely? A little pond that would encourage wildlife?
Well, we're actually, that's on the agenda for this spring. We've got to be really careful because we don't want to drown any local dogs or small children or anything like that, because it's not a public right of way, but it's used as a public right of way. And so what we're going to do is have 4 sort of shallow bowls. One of them is actually an upturned dustbin lid, an old-fashioned dustbin lid, but it'll make us, there won't be room for creatures to overwinter. It won't be deep enough, but then we can't take the risk of somebody.
Sheena, I think Fred had got a question next, and then Ruth Clark's got her hand up. So Fred, did you want to ask your question?
No, it was just a comment actually, because John Haywood and I knew from the outset really, and we were going to go down that line, but fortunately with our solar panels, someone left us a legacy, and we were able to pay for the solar panels with that. And then one guy came forward and said, well, look, I'd rather give my money to the church now rather than later, and actually paid for the installation of the battery system. So we were very fortunate. And so we got in right at the end of the feed-in tariff. It's minimal, but it is something. And so, you know, when we're not using electricity in the church, the battery charges up. When the battery's full, it's exported to the grid, and we do get something back for that. So you know, we have been fortunate, really, in getting those donations.
I don't think there was a battery option when we did ours. I certainly don't ever remember anybody talking about it. But then batteries, look, you know, batteries on your phone, and sort of how they've come in the last 10 years. It's amazing.
Ruth Clark, did you want to come in?
Yes, a couple of things. First of all, ponds under trees aren't very good because it's very shady. All you do is everything just dies. You just get a pond full of leaves. The other thing is, don't forget your peace tree is like a little sort of diverse biosphere, is it? So it's, you know, it'll have caterpillars in it for the birds, and you know, all sorts of insects. So although it's a pain, it's really quite it's a beautiful thing to actually have.
It's a beautiful tree, and we would never get rid of it. But it's I don't expect when they planted it, anybody ever thought it would get to the size it is now. I mean, it's touching the church, and
you can tame it a bit, can't you? I mean, would there be any problem if you just sort of flop it? You know?
Funnily enough, one of the things that we found out when we were doing our land management plan is that none of the trees is listed, which is amazing considering how old they are and how beautiful. But so that makes it a bit easier, I suppose, if we want to cut it back a bit. But I mean, you can imagine the leaves and the autumn. It takes weeks and weeks to clear them up.
And the other question is, I've done my email address to Val. What do I press to send?
You just press enter.
Enter. On my computer.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, that's fine. I'll leave you alone now. I'll see if I can find enter. Hang on. What have I done here? Done it. Lovely. Thank you very much. Right, I'll put my hand down now and I'll be quiet.
Well, Caroline, do you want to ask your question?
Just a quick question. Kate, was it your church that got a grant from Veolia under the landfill communities fund? What was that? What did that fund?
Well, what that funded was the refurbishment of Church House, which is our church hall. Because it's used as a community hall quite widely, and you know, it's not just for church use. It was possible to get them to pay for the refurbishment, and it's not that difficult an application, and they are very keen now to have projects that have got ecological impact. Each time I see messages from them now, they're saying we really favour projects that are looking to be carbon neutral or seeking to benefit the environment. I think a lot of these won't do church buildings because of the sort of denomination thing. Community buildings, yes, if you're building, a lot of the application was about how many people use it, and it's not just used by the church, is it? And then I also got some money from the National Lottery, the 10K application, which again is quite easy to do, that one, and that did the insulation. So both of those will do your church hall, but they won't do anything for a place of worship.
Right. I think that there is possibly, I mean, I haven't explored it, but I used to work for Solar Community Housing, and you're probably aware that they used to have 40 tower blocks in North Solar, and the finance director eventually did a deal with British Gas, because when we were in EU, you had to do so much, you had to spend so much money on environmental projects each year, and British Gas got around to doing it, and it was coming up to the end of the financial year, and they would have been fined the equivalent amount if they didn't spend it. So we were able to get all 40 tower blocks clad, and it was with proper cladding, Grenfell Tower type stuff, for free, because BP had basically made a mess of their finances, and they needed to spend the money. And it was a fantastic, deal. It was really, really good. And I think a lot of big corporations are, it's possible to get money from them because they all want to look as if they're doing good and helping the community and so forth. But it's how you go about it, and I don't really know. But that particular finance director is now the director of finance at the diocese, Karen Priest. So we could perhaps get some information from her.
Just before we let Sheena go, has anybody got any burning questions before we just say thank you very much and finish with our sharing news and information and things? Claire, did you have a question? Did you? No, anybody else?
No, it was brilliant. Really appreciated it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Really.
Yes, yeah. I do think that one of the things is, is not to get hung up on projects like a wildlife pond or a wildflower meadow or something like that, because I gave a talk in 2018 to a church in Sutton, which is very comfortably off church. They already had solar panels on some part, and they seemed very keen to go for eco church. And I went and gave them a talk, and afterwards there were loads of questions, and people were really friendly and interested. They had a keen young man who was leading their eco group, and it all seemed, excellent. And I was expecting them to get their bronze at any time. And when I didn't hear, I chased them up. And the young man said that, they were trying to build a wildlife pond in the grounds. And there'd been some sort of controversy about it. Some people wanted this and some people wanted that, and so, sort of thing. And they just became completely obsessed with the wildlife pond. And as far as I'm aware, they still haven't got their bronze. So, it's awfully easy to get sidetracked. And it sounds, as if you lot are all on the ball, and that's great. And I wish you all the very, very best, and especially with the gold. I mean, a couple more golds, and I think, Birmingham Diocese could very, very well become the first diocese to get a silver, which would be rather super for the new bishop, who I hope is...
And with your encouragement, Sheena, we can share, and, it all helps, doesn't it, to help us to be informed.
That's
and we
right.
can inform our eco groups. If you want to stay on, you're very welcome to, Sheena. We've only got about another quarter of an hour, but if you want to go and have a cup of tea and have a rest after...
I think I'll go and give my voice a rest.
Yeah, but anyway, thank you so much.
Really. All the very best, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
My suggestion is that I stop recording now, if that's okay with people. Is that all right?